From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Good evening and welcome to Ask the Attorney. I'm Amy Rao Mohan. I'm your host today, and along with Kevin Kennedy.
Hi, Amy.
Hi. It's
good to be with you
good
as
to
always.
See you.
Yes.
From the Kennedy Law Firm in Clarksville, and we're here on this show. It's a great opportunity to be able to ask any type of legal question that you may have, whether it's civil or criminal, family law. I mean, we kind of get into everything
We go
here.
around the block, and we don't know that we always have the answer, but we're going to give it our best shot.
Yes.
Each time.
Definitely call that number at the bottom of your screen. That's 737 plus 737-7587. And you've got two attorneys here ready to answer your questions. Free legal advice. Can't get better than that.
I know. You know, the truth of the matter, every time that we get up tomorrow, we're going to be confronted with some kind of legal issue. Whether you want to or not, it will be in your doorstep. And it's been a unique time this past week at the Kennedy Law Firm. The waiting room's been full, phones ringing off the wall. Lots of problems. People say, well, how's your business? Well, it didn't say that you're solving everything, but you got lots of business because there's so many issues. And when you hear all the different stories, well, you know, when we get our phone calls, we hear everything. And that's why I love your broadcast, because we are really, it's our heart to try to help everyone.
Yeah. And lawyers aren't always there for, you know, the bad thing. I feel like we get bad reputations. I think there was a poll recently that said, you know, what are the top 10 mistrusted professions?
Yes.
One was journalists, and then two were lawyers, and been a part of both, and it seems like an unfair characterization.
Well, you know, for years they always said, you know, people hate lawyers, but they love their lawyer.
Yeah.
And I know that's probably true. We have some great relationships, and I try to teach the young lawyers that come at the firm, you know, just be a friend. You know, when you're down, you just need to be a friend to the friendless and give hope to the hopeless.
Right. Now call that number at the bottom of your screen, 737 plus 737-7587. And again, Kevin is here to answer any of your questions, whether you might have a question about wills or your car loan, whether you've got a question about Social Security, health care. He'll be able to answer all of those questions for you. And Kevin, tell me a little bit about your practice and what you do so people understand the experience you've had.
Well, now I practice a little over 30 years, and it's been a general practice, you know, where you're dealing with all kinds of family issues. One of the things I learned early on, there is no such thing as the perfect lawyer. There's no lawyer that knows all the law and knows the statute and then is very articulate and is able to have the relationships with the people and the judges. So I learned early on that a team approach was the best. That's why I love being on the show with you, because we can interact with ideas. And you know, this lawyer, he may know the answer, but I like to discuss it because it helps me think through it. And when we were at the law school, one of the first things I learned is we have to identify the issues. So we go through the facts, and if we can identify those issues, and some lawyers, they never catch the issue. So how are they going to get the answer if they never even identified the potential risk of what we say? And some people call me and say, well, Kevin, they're all over me. Should I talk to them? I say, guys, don't say anything. You stop it. Slow it down. I tried to teach my children. I said, if we get in a jam, say, I want to talk to my dad. And they said, well, you're 21 years old. Call my daddy. I said, and we'll slow things down and let me ask. Fellas, what's going on? What's this all about? And, you know, knowledge is power. That's why our viewing audience, the more they learn tonight, it's more powerful that they become. And I want to encourage them. What you learn from me, share with the family, share with the children, co-employees.
I learned a lot from this show, being a fairly new lawyer. You know, I spent almost 5 years here at Channel 5, and then another couple years at different stations, and then went to law school after that. And so just hearing from you and hearing all the questions we get is a great
Well, you know,
learning
last
tool.
week we had a situation where it was a DCS problem, but I already saw it coming towards a criminal problem. Well, immediately, let's get our resources together and let's make a game plan so that we don't get caught off guard. And I think when I had a judge tell me one time, he said, Kevin, your experience will protect you. That's why you love mentors and having older lawyers, because they don't have to know the answer, but they can smell trouble a mile away.
Right.
So we are sensitive to those areas and identify them.
Well, we're already getting some calls here, and remember, keep calling that line, 737 plus 737-7587. We've got Stacy here on the line.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
Stacy.
I got several questions here. I'm First of all, I wonder if you could give me the law with regard to trespassing on this would be a condominium property. My understanding is that if someone asks you to leave the property, you must leave. But when there's no trespass, there isn't a lack of a no trespassing sign. I wonder how that would play out.
Okay. In the state of Tennessee, if you're at my home and I said, Amy, you need to leave now, and if Amy refused to leave and we call the police, she could be charged with criminal trespass, and that's a misdemeanor in the state of Tennessee, could carry up to 11 months, 29 days. And so it's not a problem till you refuse to leave. And I don't have to have that no trespassing sign up, just the owner. And if you lease the property, you have the same rights. You can tell someone to leave, they have to leave. It's a public policy to avoid problems. So the laws are written to try to protect and keep down domestic problems. So when they say leave, it's best to leave.
And Stacy, you said you had a couple other questions as well.
Yes. I'm involved in a case where there's some recusal issues involving the judge and so forth, and what the place that it's at now is, how do you appeal? There was an expedited order to, it was rule, I think it's 6502 or 62, it's just basically brings it back to, removal of all orders and, in the case of mistake or fraud or whatever. And that was filed concurrently with a recusal motion. And my understanding is that the recusal laws have changed. They've been tightened so that if a judge insists on being on a case, then they've got to make that known. And it makes it really, really difficult, I would think, because I would think if a judge wants to be on a case, then you question what that judge's motives. So that there's those questions. And in this case, the judge just refused to. She said, I'm not going to refuse myself, and I'm not going to grant your motion. And then there was an agreed order, and I put that in quotes because the agreement was not fulfilled. The agreement was signed under duress. In other words, one of the parties, it takes two to tango, and they both have responsibilities. And the one party did not fulfill their obligation. The other party, it was, as I said, signed under duress. There were some conflicts of interest and things that were not disclosed, and that's why that's all cloudy.
Okay, well, I'll try to answer that for you. A great point she brings up. If you and I make an agreement, you've got to be careful to understand, have a good understanding, keeps down a misunderstanding. So if I don't understand this agreed order, I'm not going to sign it. And, I have lawyers argue with me all the time. And I said, well, just put that little section in the order. They said, Kevin, you don't have to put it. I said, well, then just baby me. Let's just put this in, because a good understanding keeps down a misunderstanding. So that's great, because you're going to be held. If you signed on it, you're going to be held. It's a wonderful thing.
You can submit a competing order.
Yes.
Right.
Well, then it wouldn't be an agreed order.
Right.
So you have a right, if the other lawyer submits an order that you say that's not what the judge signed, then you have a right to submit your own order, and it'll probably lay 10 days. The judge may sign yours, may sign the other, or he may call for another hearing. And you do have a right to appeal. So a person can appeal judge's ruling if they said, I'm not going to recuse myself. And, that is public policy. If someone is in there and they're listening to the judge, and for some frivolous reason they ask to recuse, the judge has a right in the interest of justice to keep pursuing it. On the converse, if there is one of those impropriety notions or suspicions,
or appears to be
or even appears to be, many times the judge will say, I'll just bow out, let another judge have it and go. But you have a right to appeal those.
Okay. Let's go to Marilyn here on 2. Hi, Marilyn.
Hello.
Hello.
How can we help you today?
Okay, I have a question in regards to death and paternity and Social Security for a minor child when the parents were not married. My great-nephew was killed, and he supposedly had a 15-month-old little girl by a lady. But she was implicated. She's been implicated in his death. We find out now that she has gone to Social Security to try to get benefits for this child. And yes, he did sign saying that he was the father on the birth certificate, but there was no real paternity established. With this young man, and the state has said that because he's dead now that they're going to drop it. They were going to try to establish paternity, but now that he's deceased, they're going to drop it. So does she have the right to get Social Security benefits for her child, even though it wasn't completely established that it was his child?
I understand, and it's a good point. Remember, the Social Security Administration, they can make decisions on what they want to make. Of course, they can be appealed. Now, as a general rule, what the viewing audience is really interested in is so many guys, they come in and say, well, this is your baby, so they sign the birth certificate. And everybody's happy. And then within 6 months, no one is happy. Well, first off, signing the birth certificate does not make you the legal father. Only a paternity action and a court order. And when you sign that, you have a right to get the baby's name changed. So the Social Security Administration could have some leeway if they feel like this woman's sworn testimony would be evidence enough for this child to receive the benefits. They can make that determination. Likewise, if someone said, we've got enough evidence to show this is not, so it just gets down to a matter of what is the evidence and what is required for that administrative judge, to be satisfied with what the evidence really, and the weight of the evidence. It's a preponderance of the evidence. What that means is just the very slightest of evidence in civil cases. That's the difference in a civil case and a criminal case. It has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. In a criminal case, that means the burden of proof is heavier, the weight of the evidence. And they say, well, how do you weigh that, Kevin? Every man, what does a reasonable man think? And that's really how the law shifts. And I've said this before, when ideas of men and values of men change, the law changes. And that's why this is election year. It's important to have judges who have those values that the public has, and their interpretation. There's a lot of interpretation that goes on among lawyers and judges in the entire judicial system.
Right. Well, we've got several more calls coming up, and please continue to call that number on your screen, 737+, and we'll be right back with Kevin Kennedy after this.